Aha!
Hi, yes.
Robert, I presume.
Yes, sir.
Do you go by Robert, Rob, Bob, hey you?
I go by Max.
Max works for me. You can call me Kage.
Good old Uncle Kage.
Tell me, before we begin, how old are you?
I am 32.
Perfect. In that case, this is sake.
Yes, I have watched many of your wine streams, and I'm like, if only I could send you some sake.
We shall, it's the thought that counts. I have some that I just bought this very evening. After helping the nice old lady out, we actually went to the wine store and we had ourselves an evening, let's just say. And I brought some sake home. So I shall drink this in your honor. Kampai.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So before we start, tell me about this this assignment that you have. What brought this on?
Well, I am getting ready to graduate in December with an associate's degree in English.
Okay.
Um, I initially first did a furry research paper
Mhm.
uh, 2.5 years ago,
Right.
and of course it was just finding different research articles on EBSCOhost through the database, and it never crossed my mind then to actually do an interview with you.
Okay.
So this time I'm like, I want to dig deeper. I want to make it my last final report for graduation and make this one really count. So I'm like, okay, I want to get somebody who is with the fandom, been with the fandom for a while. I've been with the fandom since high school,
Mhm.
about 15, 16 years ago,
Mhm.
but never really had a chance to really get involved. So,
Okay. Not sure what you mean by get involved.
well, every time that I have wanted to go to a convention, and with Anthrocon wanting to be my first convention I go to,
Hmm?
something always happened.
I can understand.
Something always happened. So,
Well, you got me here. I am a bubbling fountain of information, vomiting forth knowledge for your benefit.
I much appreciate it. Um, so tell me a little bit about yourself, your role in the fandom, um, what you do as chairman of Anthrocon.
Okay. I assume you're recording this for your notes.
Yes.
Okay. So formalities, we'll get those aside. I am Dr. Samuel Conway. I am the chairman and CEO of Anthrocon. Um, I am giving this interview for academic purposes, and any content may be used indeed for the academic pursuits for which was previously described, etc., etc., etc.
Great.
So now you have it on record. If anybody says, "Oh, did Uncle Kage let you?" Yes, Uncle Kage let him. All right, leave us alone. Okay. All right. You've asked a very broad question. I'll try not to give a very broad answer. Um, I am indeed uh, Dr. Samuel Conway. Ooh, yay. Better known as Uncle Kage. I am the CEO of Anthrocon Incorporated. I am the chairman of the annual Anthrocon convention in Pittsburgh. I have been in this role since the 30th of June of 1998, which is when I filed the Articles of Incorporation for Anthrocon in Pennsylvania.
Interesting. um, was Anthrocon already organized um, before you became chairman, or did you start it?
Oh, it was organized. I hear a voice in the background. Is there somebody with you there?
Yeah, my mom's in the kitchen.
Oh, tell her I said hello.
He says hello.
How do you do, miss?
Okay.
The convention began as Albany Anthrocon in 1997, and it was organized by essentially a group of students at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Albany, New York. There had been an unsuccessful, I shouldn't say that, there had been a partly successful attempt to found an East Coast furry convention at a time when the only furry convention in the United States was Conference on the West Coast. In the 90s, it was kind of difficult for people to get there. So this aborted attempt to start an East Coast furry convention, whereas that convention did not succeed, it at least generated interest. It made it apparent that, yes, there was a market for a convention on the East Coast of the United States. So these kids and by kids, I mean people under 30, at RPI said, we could run a convention. How hard could it be? Well, they learned their first year. Pardon. I attended that first year convention in 1997. Already, I was a veteran convention goer, and I had been involved with the running of conventions as a volunteer for a number of years. And what I saw was a group of people who didn't have the foggiest idea what they were doing, but they had, oh my God, they had heart, they had spirit. They really, really wanted to make this thing work. It kind of worked that first year. Oh, pardon me. They wanted to have a second year, and for that second year, they invited me to be their guest of honor. This was the first time I'd ever been asked to be guest of honor at a convention. I'd been asked to perform at conventions, but never as a guest of honor. Oh my goodness!
Right.
As the lead up to the convention was coming, it became very apparent that they were in trouble. Again, they had a lot of spirit, they had a lot of drive, they had a lot of ideas, but you can't run a business with spirit, drive, and ideas.
Right.
They had zero business sense. And it was very clear that they were headed for a pretty significant fall. They were going to lose their shirts. Out of desperation, they asked their guest of honor, could you help us? Could you take over? This was very awkward. I'm going to be guest of honor and chairman at the same time. It won't look good, but I'm willing to do it. In fact, what I recall telling them was, I'm willing to do it for a year. But what I also told them was, if you want this thing to succeed, you can't run it like a bunch of kids having a party in a dorm room, which is kind of what you've been doing.
Right.
It's not sustainable. You need to run it as a business. You need to have leadership. You need to have a management structure. You need to have directors. You need a budget. For God's sake, you need a budget. Jesus Christ, they didn't have a budget. So I kind of on an emergency basis put all these things together. And 1998 worked. By the close of the convention, with a lot of excessive effort on my part and on the part of the staff, and a lot of wheeling and dealing, and not an insignificant amount of bullshit, we were able to break even. We were now at the level point. We paid off all the debts, and we were ready to go.
Probably back in the black.
We were by like 80 cents back in the barely back in the black. So I told the newly created board of directors, I named the board of directors because I was able to see at the convention who knew what they were doing. And I essentially said, okay, you, fantastic. You're a director. Whether you like it or not, you're a director. You, I need you to run this department. You, I need you to run this. You, good effort, wonderful time. We'll see you next year, okay? That's what you got to do. So I did not found Anthrocon. I fine-tuned an already existing organization. That is the short answer to your short question.
I think a lot of misconstrued, because when I first wrote the paper, I was like, okay, well, I'll use a quote from one of your videos or whatnot. I think I put like the founder of Anthrocon, which now knowing the full story, I'm like, okay, so
well,
the
it is
fine-tuner
accurate to say that I am the founder of Anthrocon in that I founded Anthrocon Incorporated. I founded the business.
Yeah.
I did not found the convention.
Right.
Yes.
Well, cool. What is your role in the fandom today, and how did you become interested in the burgeoning fandom then to what it is today?
That's also a short question that's going to get a long answer. I hope
it works.
The fandom in the early 90s was different from what it is today. The fandom in the early 90s was it was a clique. It was a private club. It was a group of like-minded people having a party. And it started to attract more members, but it was still run as a private party. The original founders of Conference, the first furry convention, ran it like an extended room party. They didn't have any real concept or care for public decorum. This is our thing. Anything goes. The more outlandish, the better. I get some flack from people these days who say that I'm telling the story wrong. It wasn't like that. These people weren't there. I was there. That being said, what I'm telling you comes from my point of view, my observation at the time.
Right.
I don't claim that this is the gospel truth. I'm simply telling you what I saw. What I saw was a fandom completely out of control. Public nudity, nobody cared. Public lewdness, yeah, right. It's fun. We're on vacation. We're having a good time. The atmosphere was unwholesome. Now, I'm not a prude. My God, by no stretch of the imagination am I a prude. But even I was not comfortable. And a lot of people were not comfortable. What I saw was this group of infinitely imaginative, remarkably creative people who were inventing worlds, universes in their minds and sharing it with one another. Some of the most outstanding dreamers that I had ever encountered in my wanderings on this planet. And here they were wanting to share their dreams in this atmosphere that made them unwilling to. Because how can I dream when I am terrified because of my association with all of this, that my boss will find out, my family will find out, my landlord will find out. You're one of those people. And it was an actual serious consideration back in those days. People were losing their jobs because they were furry. People were getting thrown out of their apartments because they were furry. People were getting excommunicated from their families because their families found out they were furry. Why? Because the image that the employer, the landlord, the family had of furry was this wild, uninhibited, let it all hang out party in California.
Ah.
People were afraid to associate with it. But there was so much potential there, so much beauty, so much imagination, so many dreams that were begging to be shared. I wanted to create something where people could share those dreams, where people could express themselves without fear of being associated with that. And that's what I set out to do. Now, today, Anthrocon is, at least for the next 6 weeks, the largest convention of furry fans in the world. When Midwest Fur Fest happens, they'll take it back. Conference faded away years ago. And I have always took this as validation that this is what our community wanted. Yeah, it's fun to be uninhibited, to let it all hang out, but people didn't want that, at least publicly. They wanted to be able to get together and share that boundless imagination of theirs without reprisal, without people judging them for it.
Was Conference the first convention?
Conference was the first dedicated furry convention. It began, Wikipedia, help me out. I believe it began officially in 1989 as a convention. 89, 90. I knew. All I know is my first conference was Conference 3, which was in 1992. So yes, that would be it.
I'm like 2 years old.
Thank you.
That makes me feel old.
Prior to that, if you wanted any sort of furry stuff, there was no internet back then. You had to go to a science fiction convention. That's where people went to meet up with fans. And back then, it was all under the umbrella of science fiction and fantasy. Furry, sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons, you name it, Star Trek, everything was under the umbrella of the SF/F, the Science Fiction Fantasy Convention, because that's where it all happened. There was no other place. Gradually, as the smaller fan groups got larger, they realized we could have our own convention. Why do I need to go to a science fiction convention and look for the furries when I can go to a furry convention? I'm not there for the Spock ears and the plastic lightsabers and that stuff. I'm there for the furry stuff. I can go to this dedicated furry convention. There used to be hundreds of science fiction and fantasy conventions across the world. Now there's just a handful, because the individual communities within that universe of the imagination have now formed their own sub-universes.
Okay.
That was an answer to a question. I hope you don't mind.
Well, of all the books that I've read, there's like, it kind of breaks down talking about the science fiction deal first.
Yep.
But never really delved into it as much.
Well, it was simply a matter of the science fiction and fantasy convention was it was where you went to exercise your imagination.
Right.
Because there was no other place. Some people exercise their imagination playing D&D. Others were Star Trek fans. Others wanted to read books. Others wanted to watch anime. Others were into furry. Others were into barbarians and Conan and sword and sorcery. But the only place to do that was in this island of imagination, this convention where the dreamers would come together.
Cool. Well, a little bit about me. I delved into the furry fandom in 2008, my senior year of high school. I believe, though, I was getting into wanting to be a furry when I was like 7, 8 years old, when Cat Dog was on Nickelodeon.
Yep.
I wanted to be Dog. I grew a big attraction to watching Goofy Movie, wanted to be Max in high school, and that's where I picked up my nickname. Max was in high school. So I kind of lived up to that dream. I created 2 personas, Max and Daxter. Both one is a blue fur wolf, it was gray fur wolf. And ever since then, I've been wanting to go to Anthrocon, never made it. Something always happened. I wanted it to be my first convention to ever go to. Because I was like, okay, well, Anthrocon sounds cool. There's a lot of people. There is different cultures, different subcultures to the fandom, all different types of things. I was like, oh, it'd be so cool. Never made it. Never made it yet.
Well, just remember, Anthrocon is a major ass event. We never intended to be there. Where do you live? Where are you broadcasting from right now?
That's where I was getting to. Right now, I am in Richmond, Kentucky, the home of the Civil War battleground. So Richmond celebrates its birthday August 29th. And I'm classified as a junior, but I'm going for an associate's degree at Eastern Kentucky University.
Okay. I think, if I remember my geography right, I think Anthrocon is the closest major convention to you, but most towns actually have furry groups, or if not the town, then the county or the region. People come to me and say, how do I find furries in my area? And I say to them, where are you? And they say, I'm in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And I say, okay, dude, go to Google and look up Pine Bluff furries. And if you can't find Pine Bluff furries, look up Jefferson County furries. If that doesn't work, look up Southeast Arkansas furries. You're bound to come up with a group. They've got Facebook groups. They've got these. I don't know the discordance or the telegraphs or whatever you kids these days. Things. The groups are out there,
Right.
and I would not be surprised if you could probably do the search right now. Your local town or the nearest major city, that blank furries, and you would probably find a group. Start there. If you can't make it to the monstrous 13,000 person daikaiju that Anthrocon has become, at least find some folks in your hometown, hang out with them, get to know them. You might find, and this is something that's fairly common, you might find that, hey, this group is planning a road trip to Anthrocon. We're going to get a hotel room that only 4 people can be in because that is the maximum number of people in a and there's never more than 4 people in a hotel room. Maybe you can go along with it. The 4 people in that hotel room.
The 4.
Say, because as chairman, I only allow 4 people in one hotel room, and I would not have it any other way.
4 people, 2 people per bed.
Or if you're not comfortable with that, the floor. I recall attending PhilCon in Philadelphia. My place was under the desk. I used to be a lot thinner. Hi, Mom.
Says hi.
Okay, are you going to introduce me to the lady? At least be gentlemen.
I will when she comes back out of her bedroom.
Very good. Hopefully she'll be presentable.
Yes. I think she just answered the door to let somebody in right now.
That's okay.
Yeah. How would you explain to someone who is not associated with the fandom or is new to learning about the fandom? It's basically saying, what is all this? What is it about?
I give entire presentations, hour-long presentations, dedicated to that question. What is all this? What I tell people is, what you want to say is, it's a furry convention. Don't do that, because we know what that means. People outside of our community don't know what it means. And you don't want to make someone who is curious feel dumb. That's a turnoff to them. Mm-hmm. If you say to me, what is all this? And I say, well, this is a conflagration of in a convention. You know what that is, of course. Immediately, they don't know what that is. And now they feel ignorant, and that's a negative feeling. You describe it in terms that people could understand. What is all this? It is a cartoon animal convention. Because those are terms everybody understands. A cartoon animal. We all know what cartoon animals are. You've got one over your right. Left shoulder there, as a matter of fact. Yeah. They know the term cartoon. They understand animal, cartoon animals. When they see the fursuits, they don't know what fursuit means. The best description I ever heard anybody give was, those are freelance mascots. That's gorgeous. I adopted that.
I like that.
Yeah. What is all this? This is a gathering of cartoon animal fans. Not just fans, but we have creators here. We have animators. We have cartoonists. We have artists. We have performers. and just fans of the above. Anybody who is involved with bringing a cartoon animal to life, or who just likes to see a cartoon animal brought to life, is here. That's how I answer that question on the streets of Pittsburgh when people say, "What is all this?"
It's like the famous question, what is this?
What is all this? It's a complex answer, but you need to narrow it down to its simplest parts. Because this person asking this question doesn't want a dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
They just want an answer to their question. Why is that guy dressed up like a raccoon? Yep, he's a cartoon animal fan. Why is he dressed up like a raccoon? He is a freelance mascot, if you will.
Not a trash panda.
Now, that is a slur we can use among ourselves, but let us not speak ill of the Procyanid Americans in our midst.
Right. That's one quote that was in Guardians of the Galaxy that was just real funny.
Yep.
When Rocket don't even know, is like, is that better? I don't know.
Have you seen the recent film, by the way?
Yes, I have.
The scene when Rocket just looks at the label and he doesn't have to say anything. He looks at the label, Procyon Lotor, raccoon. And at that moment, you see his face and he suddenly realizes,
Oh my God, I'm a raccoon.
yes, that is a beautiful scene. And you cannot tell me they didn't have furries on the writing staff
No,
there.
I cried. I did.
I admit I puddled up a little bit. I don't think I see any actual tears, but I definitely was yeah.
Yeah.
You're a Southerner, you know how it is. Yeah, men don't cry. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I say you're familiar with fur science.
I am intimately familiar with First Science. My name is on some of their papers.
Oh, cool. Uh, with the research that Fur Science has done over the years by breaking down the fandom into different statistic graphs, how do you believe that research is accurate now or changed?
Um, the research is ongoing. Um, every year they're conducting the survey. Do I believe it's accurate? I have the highest respect for the scientists who are conducting it. They always uh, deliver to me the we call the IRB, the Institutional Review Board evaluation of the research. This is not just something they're doing. This is something the university looks at, evaluates, and approves. So it's not fly by night research, if you will. This is actually institutionally approved and reviewed research
Okay.
by some of the, I would venture to say, top researchers in the field. So if the question is, do I think their research is accurate? I do believe it is.
Okay.
Or the research is as reliable as one could expect from the high caliber of scientists that's conducting it.
A few research papers that I have found, one of them being Gervasi's, he's really good. Um, I found a couple of articles that were arguing against her methods, her research.
Yep.
And I know that goes on a lot in the research field. They'll argue for and against each other. So I was like, okay, I didn't know if the research was ongoing, if it had stopped at a certain point, and like, okay, this is what we got.
Mm.
Um, I usually try to check back with them on their website a lot, and I don't see any like new stuff going up. So
That's because once you've published, you now have to get more data to update your project.
yeah,
You start out with this much data, and you can publish on it. In order to expound on that, now you need this much data, because okay, you've drawn your conclusions from this.
mm-hmm.
If we want to expand on our conclusions, we need a larger data set. So now we need this much data. And then we can post our follow-up, we can post our next paper. Now we want to expound on this. Now we need this much data. And as you can see,
Yeah,
you can crank out a paper in 2001 and then crank out one in 2002.
yeah,
Then it's going to take you to 2005 to get enough data for your next one. Then it's going to take you to 2010 to get enough. That's science. And you mentioned that you saw some people arguing with it. That's great. I am happy to hear that, because that is science. You must have debate. You must have criticism. You must have argument. Because if you publish a paper and nobody argues with it, you might as well just post to Twitter.
sure.
It's not science unless somebody challenges you. Once you have challenged my findings, now it's incumbent upon me to defend those findings. And if necessary, I might have to gather more data to mount a defense against your challenge. It's entirely possible that in gathering more data, I find out that your challenge has merit. My original conclusions were perhaps not as clear as I thought they were.
Okay.
This is how science works. You can't go cry in the corner, boo hoo, boo hoo. You know, this guy didn't like my paper. No, he read your paper. Yay! Oh, thank God somebody read this stuff. And he's arguing with it. That's great. This is now my opportunity to explain to him, this is why your counter argument is not valid. We go back and forth. This could be years, decades, centuries. It depends. But eventually, somebody challenges your work, you defend it. They challenge something else, you defend that. They challenge something else. You keep going until they've run out of challenges. And at that point, you can start calling it a law.
Okay.
I am ecstatic to see challenges to the Gervasi group's initial findings, because that simply means that the topic is being discussed, it's being debated, it's being evaluated.
Right.
The challenges are not mean-spirited. They're not, well, I didn't give you it. The challenge is simply to verify that these findings are correct. Yep. I have here an object in my hand. I can say to you, this is a shoehorn with a leather handle. You can write back, how did you determine that handle was leather? If I say, well, it looks like leather, that's not science. You have now found the flaw in my thesis. But if I can go back and say, There's a label on the back that says genuine leather. And you would come back and say, how do you know that label is accurate? Well, I took this to the laboratory. I bounced an infrared beam off of it, and the infrared beam matched the library signature of leather. Then you would say, what library did you use? Did you buy that off of Amazon, or did that come from whatever? That's how science works. If somebody comes to me and says, I believe this, as a scientist, I'm going to keep questioning. Why? How? What? Okay. That piece of data, that doesn't look right to me. And I'm going to keep doing that until you've convinced me.
Okay.
Now up to to Dr. Jabassi and her team to convince the challengers. Is the data accurate? I believe it is, but they now are in the process of proving to me that that data is accurate.
Which does make science interesting. Because I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, how far does these statistics go back? And this is when I first done the research, the first time. And can only find articles back to 2008, 2000.
Yep.
So.
Well, even though I sponsored the research as Anthrocon's chairman, I questioned a lot of their tactics. Okay, they're going to ask furries this question. I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a psychologist, but I am a man of science. And they said, this is what the question is going to be. And my response was, okay, that seems to me to be a leading question. Are you sure you want to? Okay, let me give you a simplistic example of a leading question.
Okay.
We see this in politics all the time. You get the questionnaire slipped under your door. You know, do you agree with President Biden's failed policy on? The question itself is already leading you to think that the policy is failed.
Right.
So if you say to a furry, are you a homosexual? You're immediately placing that label and asking the person, does that label apply to you? A better question is, how would you describe your sexuality?
Mm-hmm.
Let them produce the label. This too is
the label.
And that was we developed the initial survey back and forth. I said, okay, I don't like this question. Let's change it. When I was satisfied with it, they went forward with it. We're at the point now that the survey has become so fine-tuned. I no longer consider myself sufficiently qualified to question it. I rely on Niagara University's, I think Niagara is still sponsoring it. I rely on their institutional review board to evaluate the questions now.
I know there's, I think his name is Steve or Steven, who presents Furry Fandom in his anthropology class. Who was part of the Fur Science group.
I may not know him as Stephen, but
yeah,
you are almost certainly correct, because the Fur Science group has grown.
Right.
It started. It was just Kathy Gerbasi at the beginning, and then her graduate students joined in, and then they got their degrees, they became professors themselves, and they carried on the research. So it is growing now. I don't think I even know who still is involved. It's become so big.
Right. Yeah, I took a anthropology class back over the summer. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe, they'll incorporate that. Nah. We're talking about like, okay, human skeleton and primates and all this stuff. I'm like, boring, but okay.
Yes, here's the skeleton, and it's this many centimeters by that, and it's got this bone structure and whatever. Yeah, great. But let's do an anthropological study. I'll quote from an old TV series. The best place at the fire was always reserved for the storyteller. That's my kind of anthropology. You can talk about dentition and the length of this bone and whether the finger is longer here or whatever. That's great. Knock yourself out. What fascinates me is how our early ancestors interacted with one another.
Mhm.
And one thing I do firmly believe, I'm almost old enough to speak from experience, but one thing I do firmly believe is that our early ancestors, and I'm talking about that antediluvian time when human imagination was just beginning to form, when we were trying to understand the world around us, we did so by looking to the animals that we shared the world with. We compared ourselves to them. We compared them to us. One thing that I have long said, and I do believe I am correct, although there's no way to evaluate the veracity of my thesis, is that those ancient ancestors of ours used to say to one another, "What stories do you suppose the wolves tell around their fire?" And that is the basic germination of furry fandom today.
You ever heard the story of two wolves?
Of two wolves?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Tell me.
I don't know.
Actually, when you're talking, I'll be able to hear it. I'm dying of thirst. Keep
Okay.
talking. I'll be right back. Go on. I want to hear this. Go on. I can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up, but it was really interesting.
I'm listening. You're not talking.
It's a old Cherokee teaching
Yeah.
that an old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, and arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
The other
Yes.
is good. He is joy, peace, love, serenity, humility,
Mm-hmm.
kindness. And the same fight is going on inside you and every other person. And the boy
Good.
says to his grandfather, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee says, the one you feed.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now, notice the description of that story. They are taking the wolf and imbuing him with these human traits. Isn't that what we do?
Our way past ancestors, like back in Cherokee time,
Yeah.
uh, I think a lot of them did grow up around the animals and use the wolves to hunt.
Yeah.
So I always say I liked your quote way back when. I can't remember what, where, or when. Um, we are adults who never forgot our old friends.
That's true. That is exactly what we are.
So, and I love that quote so much. Um, I think Dominic actually used that in the Personas DVD when he did that document. He used that video.
Trying to remember which documentary was that. There was one documentary I really liked. There was one that was a hatchet job on me, but I can't remember which one it was.
I think Personas was the hatch job, and Lisa Lang was the better of the one.
That's right.
Yeah.
There was, and then there was the one uh, that what's her name? Coyote did. That was. They all start with fur. It's hard to keep them straight.
Yeah, when I saw Furry Nation by Lisa Lang, it was CNN. I was like,
Yep.
oh my God, something that is on a news channel that is not Fox News.
Yep. I will say, Ms. Ling was an absolutely darling person to talk to. I got a very, very good feel from her. I could tell right away she was asking questions of curiosity. She didn't have an agenda. She was not looking to get statements out of me to support that agenda.
Mhm.
So I felt very, very good about the CNN interview.
Um, it makes it. I hate going into arguing both sides of fandom.
Mhm.
I do.
That's science.
Especially with this paper. Uh, so the fandom since the 1980s has faced ridicule
Yep.
from the media,
Mhm.
um, claiming that furries are nothing but sexual deviants and perverts. We all know what that is,
Of course.
especially CSI. Uh, do you think that's a bit over the top, and why?
Oh, of course. Well, here's the thing. First off, that word all comes in. Furries are all. The very second you throw that word in, the discussion with me is finished
Right.
because you don't have a sufficient data set to say that all of these people are that. You saw 3 or 4, and now you are drawing a conclusion. And you're doing that in front of a scientist. My response to that is, you're a fucking idiot.
Right.
I'm sorry, pardon my language, but that is my response. If you're going to draw that broad a conclusion from that small a sample set, go back to high school. Now, let us look at the genesis of that image,
Mm-hmm.
because they got this idea from somewhere. Where? There are two major factors. I'm not going to say the two reasons, but the two major factors that come into play. I'm going to take you back now to 1993 or thereabout, those
Okay.
early days of conference. The very, very first media coverage that I can remember, I believe it was either 1993 or 1994. It was in Wired magazine,
I know that
which,
magazine well. Yeah.
yeah, okay, so you know it.
Yeah.
It was coverage of conference. Now, let's look at this objectively. a journalist walks into this sex party, which is what conference de facto was.
Mhm.
And again, people attack me for this. Oh, it was not. Sure, kid. I was there. I saw it. I cannot state with certainty that the organizers deliberately marketed the convention to the fetish communities of Southern California.
Mhm.
That was a rumor that circulated at the time. I heard this rumor. I don't know if it's true. However, looking at the way the convention evolved, I can imagine where the genesis of that rumor came from, whether it has veracity or not. The leather crowd was very much in evidence. The, shall we say, let it all hang out crowd was very much in evidence. It was a very open atmosphere. A journalist coming in and looking at this very uninhibited community would naturally get the idea that, okay, this is a furry convention. It looks like a giant fur-covered Calcutta slum. This is what furries are. And that's what was reported. First impressions are lasting impressions.
Right. Absolutely.
I've been fighting that image. Is there adult material in the fandom? Of course there is. There's adult material in every fandom. That's what Rule 34 is all about. Is there more adult material in furry fandom than any other fandom? I don't think so. Have you ever been to an anime convention?
No. I love anime. Never been to.
You've not seen more schoolgirls getting raped by tentacles. Just go to an anime convention. It's all over the place. Okay, so that's an aside. Anyway, so the media said, what's this furry about? They saw the uninhibited atmosphere of conference, and that's what they reported on. And other media outlets picked it up. And those of us who were attending the convention and were not comfortable with that atmosphere and were kind of squirming in the corner saying, gee, I wish they wouldn't do that. We're just there. Nobody's asking our opinion. How many of us were there? I don't know. Maybe it was just me and one other guy. Maybe it was 98% of the convention. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that there was that contingent who really didn't like it. But it was the only furry convention in the world. If you wanted to go to a furry convention, you had to go here until others came about. So that's the first thing. That's the first factor that led to the bad impression that furries had. The second factor is, I think, a little more esoteric, something that I cannot support with data. I can only support subjectively with my own observations of the human condition. And that is, especially here in America, there is an almost overwhelming tendency among the general population to discount something that they do not understand as a fetish. I don't get this. It must be a sexual thing. And I think that's just this culture, because I don't see it in Europe. I don't see it in Asia. I didn't see it, in South America or in Australia. It's a uniquely North American thing. What is this? I don't get it. It's got to be a sex thing. That's just how Yanks are. And why would they not get it? Because at a Star Trek convention, you can point to Paramount Studios and say, see that property? That's what we're here for. Those movies, those TV episodes that you've seen yourself. People understand that. The Harry Potter fans, what is it? Oh, these books that J.K. Rowling wrote. That's what we're here for. Hobbit fans, the D&D fans, Babylon 5, all of these anime, all of these are consumer fandoms. And that is, they're latching on to somebody else's dream.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. That's great. Somebody else dreams something up, you're embracing that. But now you can point to that. What's this all about? It's that. See that? That's what it is. Furries, we are a producer fandom. Yes, we have Zootopia, we have Robin Hood, we have examples in the major media, but there is no singular media thing that we point to and say, that's us. Who's the 6.5 foot tall, bright pink raccoon with the top hat? That's me. That's my original creation. That's my dream. You can't point to something that people can readily understand. And we fall back to the previous thesis. You're trying to tell these people something that they can't grok. And immediately, oh, this must be a fetish.
That's the first thing you believe.
Exactly. So we had the first impression given by conference. We have the lack of broad-minded thinking, and that is a tremendous generalization, for which I will apologize, on the part of the public at large, who cannot necessarily grasp the personal nature of our fandom and immediately then will discount it as a fetish.
Mm-hmm.
There is also, and this is something that I've been speaking with the First Science group about exploring further. There is a significant number of people of alternative sexuality in our fandom. And I've been asking myself for decades, why? Are shorthand notation gay people? It's easier to say.
Right.
Are gay people more likely to be furries? Are furries more likely to be gay? What is the connection? Why would we have a statistically higher number of gay people in our fandom? And this, I bounced this off of the First Science group, and we actually had a very, very lengthy discussion about it, and we're trying to figure out how best to explore it. I have a hypothesis. By definition, a hypothesis is an idea for which you don't have data.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am going to rely on First Science to get the data. They get enough data, it will become a theory. After it's been argued back and forth and challenged, that theory then will become a law. how science
How
works.
science works.
Yep. But my hypothesis is this. I'm old. You might not know it, but I'm actually pretty. I was around in the 70s and the 80s at a time when to be gay in the United States was a social death sentence, if not a de facto physical death sentence. Let me take you back to, let's say, the year 1985 or thereabout. You're a young homosexual. Because we are human beings, we are social creatures, we crave companionship. We want to be with somebody. That's just how we're wired, deep in that reptilian portion of our brains. But our body chemistry tells us we will be most happy with somebody of our own gender. Back in those days, if you wanted that companionship, which you needed, you yearned for, you burned for, you had to have, it was a biological imperative to have someone. You had an equal chance in 1985 of finding a partner or of contracting a fatal disease which could not be understood, or of getting yourself beaten to death. You had equal chances. It's Saturday night. Which one do I want? Do I want to go out and get beaten to death? Do I want to catch a fatal disease? Or do I want to find somebody? It was a difficult time.
Right.
Then here came this remarkable thing, this computer, these modems. You could, in safety, reach out electronically through your mind, but you could reach out and you could meet with someone. You didn't risk catching a fatal disease. You didn't risk getting the life beaten out of you. You could connect with someone. And in those days, the first social programs were made by furries. They used to have the multi-user dungeon, the MUD, they call it, the MUD. You could log into a computer and sword and sorcery, you show up in a room and you got a sword and there's an elf and you hit the elf with your sword. Yay, how fun. But it was furries who first created a program where you would get together and you wouldn't hit the elf with a sword. You would talk to the elf. You would interact with the elf. You would have discourse with the elf. You might even role play intimacy with the elf. Role playing intimacy that you didn't dare engage in real life because you could die. 2/3 chances of dying.
Right.
So that's my hypothesis, that as the online furry community began to expand, these lonely, desperately lonely individuals who were denied companionship in the real world could now get together in a safe space and explore their sexuality. You had young people who maybe weren't sure I don't know if you were ever a young person who wasn't sure, but I think they exist. How can I explore these feelings? How can I work through them? How can I understand myself? Do I go down to 51st Street to the local gay bar and hope that the guy with the brick in the back is not there waiting for me? Or do I go on to this text-based computer-generated world and meet up with somebody who is willing to explore with me?
I think the safer the bet.
Yep. Why are there so many gays in furry fandom? I believe that's why. And we're going to leave it to For Science now to gather data.
We have a more open world now than back then too.
We do. Yes, we do. But I don't know if you've been watching the news. There's a significant force out there that is trying to reverse that. Yes, we enjoyed for a short period of time openness, but that's now being challenged itself. And that challenge, that's not science. That is simple bigotry.
Politics.
Yeah.
Now, I don't try to watch the news because all I hear is about Trump, and I'm just like, you get so tired of hearing about it. I won the election fair and square. No, no, you didn't.
And you are at something of a disadvantage in your generation, as are we all. When I was young, you had news sources you could trust because they had a journalistic code of ethics. They reported what was factual. They would not report it until they had sufficient evidence to show it was factual. And if they fucked up, they would print a retraction. Those things are long gone. We now live in a world where unnamed news outlets such as Fox News, all they have to do is print a headline, President Biden caught with underage girl. They put that headline on their webpage, leave it there for a day, and then just quietly delete it. The damage is done. People have seen the headline. Now they're running with it. And that's not hyperbole. You might notice Fox News does that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
They'll throw up a headline and then just let people read it, and then they'll take it down. And they say, oh, well, we took it down. Yes, but you didn't retract it.
Took it down, but we didn't retract their.
Yes. I mean, I could, if you're in a classroom, I could run into the classroom and point to the teacher and say, this man is a pedophile, and then run out. I'm never seen again. Who the hell was that guy? But now everybody in the class is thinking, wait a minute, what was that about? That poor teacher could lose his job. He could lose his livelihood. He could lose his home. He could wind up on Skid Row. He might wind up killing himself. All because somebody ran up and made a statement. That didn't happen when I was your age.
Right.
It does.
It does. Like there was a headline on Fox News. It was June the 5th when they're arguing about Governor DeSantis of Florida.
Yes.
You know about that, right?
Well, okay. Which one specifically are we talking about? Mr. DeSantis is a storied creature.
It was on Fox that the Furry Fandom was outraged because he shut down Florida's furry convention of allowing them to allow people under age 18.
Ah,
Yeah.
it's
When the fandom is like blossoming from that age group now, then you're just gonna shut it down.
well, okay. That's a very, very simplistic view of what happened. Let me explain. As a convention organizer, I know what these poor slubs were up against. Now, it is not a point of debate that Governor DeSantis is making the atmosphere in Florida extremely hostile to homosexuals.
Mm-hmm.
It is de facto illegal to be gay in the presence of a child in Florida. That's not what the law states, but pretty much that's what it boils down to. The organizers of Megaplex are now faced with a dilemma. You can't sling a dead cat without hitting a gay person here at our convention. Some of them are decidedly flamboyant. Some of them are unabashedly gay. There's children around. We could now face liability for permitting this. We have two choices. We either tell our attendees, don't be gay when children are around, or we got to get rid of the children so our attendees can express themselves. I don't envy them that choice. That was an agonizing choice, I'm sure, that they made.
Right.
But in their position, I would have made the same choice. I'm sorry, because of the laws of the state of Florida, we can now no longer allow people under the age of 18 to attend the convention, because the very presence of a child here would expose us to a legal liability that we as volunteers are not prepared to shoulder.
Well, Fox News ran that headline with I think it was like something to do. I think it was like a gay parade or something that was more flamboyant.
Yeah, the
And
Pride
then,
Fest.
yeah, and then put the furry fandom into that category,
Of course.
and actually had a furry on there talking about it. Now,
Yeah.
I can't say for say if he tried to play it off with the media and do well, or try to defend it.
There are some fights you cannot win. One of them is Fox News. Basically, Fox News is not journalism. Fox News is hostile entertainment media. That's there, and I say that unabashedly. If right now my door were to open and there was a Fox News crew there asking me questions, there's no defense. There's nothing I can say.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what I say, they're going to spin it the way they want.
Your back is
Because
against the wall.
they're not encumbered by journalistic ethics. And let me give you a wonderful example. I believe it was 2010, and you can look this up on the Googles yourself. It was either 2010 or 2011. President Obama wrote a book for his daughters. Basically, he wrote a children's book that he intended to give to his daughters, but he published it to share with the world. 10 people whom I admire One of the people that he listed as a person he admired was Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull, the Native American chief, I cannot recall the tribe at this particular time, that stood up to the expansionist ideals of the 19th century. Sitting Bull, of course, was the political force behind the Confederation of First Nations that took on General Custer at Little Bighorn. Very successfully, you might add.
Yeah.
He fought the good fight. In the end, he was not successful, but he stood by his ideals to the end. Was it Sitting Bull who wrote, "I will fight no more forever"? It doesn't matter. Back then, I actually kept track of the headlines that came out. CBS News. President Obama writes children's book. NBC News. President Obama writes children's book. ABC News. President Obama writes children's book. BBC, Al Jazeera, you name it. President Obama writes children's book. Fox News. Obama praises insurgent who murdered American general. That was their headline. That's Fox News right there in a perfect crystalline nutshell.
A lot of my family, well, I'm not gonna say a lot, but most of my family watches Fox News and MSNBC, and I'm just like, why?
I'm very sorry. Okay, we cannot blame them. They're being bombarded on all sides by these people saying, "We are news." Fox says, "We're giving you the truth." MSNBC, "We're giving you the truth." Al Jazeera, "We're giving you the truth." BBC, "We're giving you the truth." People don't understand what to believe. We're observing a war right now in Ukraine. We've got news coming from all sides. A bomb falls in the middle of Kyiv. Fox News will say, heroic Russians attempt to oust Nazis from Ukraine. ABC will come in and say, bomb falls in the middle of Kyiv, hospital destroyed. MSNBC will say, heroic, Ukrainians fight against Russian aggression. I get my news from Ukraine from furries who live there. I follow their Twitters because I don't care about political this and that. What I care about is, here's my friend posting a video of himself huddled in his bathroom with his cat in his arms, listening to the air raid sirens, listening to the missiles hitting, getting closer and closer, and him saying, "What did I do to deserve this?" That's where I get my information on Ukraine.
And I feel for them, really.
Yep.
My last semester, my English class, we did a small section on the war in Ukraine, and actually got to meet a Ukrainian on Zoom. So it was pretty neat. But I mean, at the same time, just knowing what's going on, like,
yep.
Oh my God, it's like it just seems to be worse every day. I feel.
Yep. The charity that was chosen by Eurofurence this year, just a few months ago, was You Animals, UA Animals. This is an organization. I've supported hundreds of charities, but this one stands out. These are people who aren't just in animal rescue. They go out into the war zone. When you have a zoo where missiles have fallen, the zookeepers have fled for their lives. You've got animals in cages with no food, no water. Here is a town that's been overrun by Russian occupiers. When they move on, the residents are gone. You've got houses with dogs, cats in them. These are people who go into the war zone literally with bombs falling around them, with bullets flying past their ears to rescue animals. Mm. I have never been prouder to support a charity. And at Eurofurence this year, I made an impassioned speech in support of you animals that everybody in the crowd says they were in tears because of it. The staff were coming up and clapping me on the back saying, we've never heard anything like that. And I hope somebody recorded it because I was drunk out of my skull and I don't remember what I said. But it must have been epic. We're getting off topic. Let's talk about furries. I'm sorry. What's your next question?
You give epic speeches regardless.
I do what I can. I'm part Irish. I was given the gift of gab at birth. I might as well use it for something.
Amen to that. I'm part Irish, and usually if I'm growing my beard, you can see it in my beard when it gets all red and whatnot. I think what we're talking about kind of led into my last question for you was, how do you respond to a lot of the media targeting furries? I think we kind of was hitting on that with different news media outlets.
We have if any media come to me today with, oh, furries are this and that, I usually just roll my eyes and say, okay, dude, yep, the 90s called. They want their information back. Yeah. That has been debunked now for more than 20 years.
Right.
You're coming to me looking for a story that doesn't exist. What I have to offer you is something so much deeper. I can offer you an insight into this community made up of these exquisite dreamers, made up of these people whose sum total of creative energy exceeds anything you're going to find in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania this weekend. These people who have shown such boundless civic responsibility, these people who have risen to the occasion time and again to help those in need, these people who will be the absolute first ones to offer open arms to someone who is suffering, these people who can create entire universes in their minds and are willing to share those beautiful images with you. And yet you come to me today and all you're concerned about is what they do behind closed doors in their bedrooms. Excuse me, I don't have time for you. That usually sets them to shame. The one particular response that I gave that I still regret a little bit because it was ungentlemanly and I'm old-fashioned, but I think it's warranted. This was a number of years ago. There was a female interviewer. I don't remember what outfit she was with, but she was relentless. She was so about the, tell us about the sex and these other things, and and okay, what is the sex you do? Sex with for sex, and I kept trying to you got the idea, and she was adamant. So I said, "May I ask you some questions?" Do you and your husband do it doggy style or missionary? Do you need lube or are you naturally wet when he fucks you? I'm sorry. Was that a rude question? And at that point, she turned and walked away. And I suspect I was justified because she was asking me the exact same sort of questions.
Mhm.
I felt it was time for her to get a taste of her own medicine. Again, my late father would rise from his grave and eat my brain for having done it, but I do think it was justified.
I believe. I mean, is it oh, I don't know how I was going to ask this. Should, when dealing something like that with the media, should you always uh, try to divert it, or turn the tables and target it back at them?
I used to give an entire hour-long presentation to answer just that question. The simple answer is, pardon me, don't try. If you are not trained in media relations, you can't win. These folks are professionals. They're out to get something out of you. Your best bet is if it is obvious to you that they're trying to get you to say something, your best bet is to end the interview. Now, the problem is you can't just say we're through talking because, oh, you look like you have something to hide.
Mhm.
If you want to end an interview and you don't want to give them the answers they're looking for, just be boring. Well, that's an interesting question. I asked my dad my dad about 3 years ago. No, actually, no. It had to be 4 years ago because I remember that was when the transmission broke. And it had to be 4 years ago because that was when the transmission in the car broke, and that was 4 years ago. So I said to my dad, I said, oh no. No. Actually, no. It was 3 years. No, it was 3 years. No, I know it was definitely 3 years ago. These people are on a schedule. They're gonna fuck off, find somebody else.
They're going to get bored real quick.
Yeah. The thing is, I've got advantages. I've had formal training in media relations. I have been trained how to talk to these folk and also how to recognize when they are trying to get shit out of me. I'm also a comic. I'm an improvisational comic. I can think on my feet. So I can spar with these folks. I don't recommend somebody who doesn't have formal training try that. And these guys have had the same training I've had. For example, do you have the time right now?
9:53.
No. Do you have the time right now? Yes, you have the time. You just gave me information that I didn't ask for. Now, that's a very, very simple example, but you understand
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sort of dynamic. I kind of threw something out there, and you then provided information that was not the question. That's the sort of things these folks are doing. I can recognize it. a person who doesn't have formal training may not recognize it and may not be able to deal with it. Most major conventions, if somebody's asking you questions you're not comfortable with, you can say, you know what? There's a media relations department here, would love to talk to you. Let me get a staff member. There's going to be two responses to that. The first response is, oh, yes, that would be great. And the second response would be, the second response, you get a security person, because that means this is a person we told they weren't allowed at the convention.
And they stuck it.
Yeah. So next question.
That wraps it up for about me. What
sure?
questions? Yeah. What questions do you have for me?
I've been interviewed hundreds of times. No one's ever asked me that question. What questions do I have for you? I'm going to ask you this. When did you become a furry?
2008 is when I officially declared myself a furry.
Good answer. Because when you said 2008, I was going to call bullshit. You know why? You didn't become a furry, my dear. You always were a furry. It was around 2008 you found out there was a name for it. And you covered that well. And I am quite firm in that belief. Nobody becomes a furry. Nobody walks into a room where there's a bunch of fursuits and say, you know what, this is cool. I think I like this. No, somebody walks into a room and in the back of their mind, they say, oh my God, this is something that's been going on in here since time immemorial. You don't become a furry. You find out that you're a furry.
I like that.
Drink of choice.
I used to do journalism in high school.
That's not a drink of choice.
Oh, drink of choice. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. It kind of broke up.
That's all right.
Drink of choice would be this. It's a fruity mixed drink called a Bahama Mama.
I know the Bahama Mama. Yes.
Yes. I'm actually going to go get one for my birthday next Saturday.
Oh, happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
I wish I was there. I'd buy one for you.
I have a little bar just right down the road.
Do they know you?
Nope. It'll be the first time I've been there.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But there is, okay, maybe this is the wrong advice to give to another person, but okay, let's take alcohol out of the equation. There is something wonderfully comforting about having a place that you go to frequently, if not regularly, that when you walk in, the person at the counter right away starts to fix your favorite thing because they know you and they know what you want. I'm at a loss for words to describe it. A sense of belonging, a sense of community that I matter. I walk into this place and somebody immediately knows what will make me happy and is now working to make that happen. You're young yet. You might not have such plates. I've got one myself. I've had several. Actually, I've got several. There's an airline club at Raleigh Airport. as soon as I walk in, the lady at the bar immediately starts pouring an Italian Prosecco because she knows that that's what I like. It's comforting. It's sort of a touch of humanity, a touch of home, if you will, to have that recognition.
You walk into a bar and everybody knows you.
Yep. If not everybody, at least the guy at the bar.
Yep.
Will wave and say, the usual, please.
I used to work at a restaurant that had a bar, and I was getting pretty good at that place.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just a server assistant, but at the same time, like if I'm going to eat there, it's just always the same drink.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have Bahama Mamas there as much as I asked. So the next best thing for me was like this green apple tequila.
Oh, that sounds deadly.
It was very, very tart
Mm-hmm.
and strong, but it was good.
Yep. There's a story that KP, a public outreach director, loves to tell about one of the housekeepers at the Westin. We've been there so many years, we usually get the same room every year. KP was always on the 6th floor in 615. One night, let's just say it was one of those years and shit was going down.
Mm-hmm.
It was difficult. KP didn't get any sleep that night. And when he came into his room the next day, there was a note on the bed from the housekeeper of the hotel saying, I notice your bed wasn't slept in. Is everything okay? Call me if you want to talk. Now, that human connection is something, it really struck a chord, but it struck a chord, I think, with me as well, because that's something that we see very, very often in our fandom. Yes, we are customers. We are coming in to your establishment, to your hotel, to your restaurant, to your convention center. We are paying you money and we are doing things and then we are leaving. And that's how every single business relationship works. But furries, just by our very nature, we seem to bring along these personal connections. I don't think that this housekeeper would do this for any other group in the world. But she feels a connection, familiarity with the furries, that she was comfortable to do this. KP still adores this lady. She's still his favorite housekeeper.
Okay.
I was just discussing with some folks earlier this evening about Anthrocon's relationship with the city of Pittsburgh. Yeah, we bring $14 million a year to the city. Yeah, the city likes your money. Of course they do. We live in a capitalism. Who wouldn't? But I think it's disingenuous to simply write it off as that's all there is to it. There is a genuine affection in Pittsburgh for Anthrocon and the furry community. And I can sense that even outside of the convention. If I go into a restaurant, people recognize this wrinkly old face. Not just the servers, but townspeople will say, hey, aren't you the furry guy? Are you guys coming back? Yeah, we are. We'll be here in July, and we're looking forward to seeing you. Yeah, that sort of affection we very, very rarely see. Even other furry conventions don't really enjoy that. Eurofurence is starting to pick it up because Eurofurence has moved to the city of Hamburg. which is a very, very, very cool city. It's got a very vibrant art scene, just like Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Here, Eurofurence attracted a lot of curiosity from the local people of Hamburg. I'm looking forward to next year because when they have their first parade, I suspect there's going to be that big stampede of local people to come see it. I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds great. I'm breaking up.
Any other questions? You got me here. This
Yeah.
is your opportunity, and I still got a full bottle back there. I can refill this.
I asked that question a lot of what questions do you have for me? Because this too also helps me in the interviewing skills for jobs. So I've seen a lot of other employers do that when they get towards the end of their portion. They're like, "What questions do you have for me?" So I'm trying to pick up on a lot of doing that skill too. So this is helping me out.
That's very, very. That's a very, very good question. It's been a long time since I've interviewed, but I always kept that one in the back of my skull for a job interview. What questions do you have for me? Depending on how much of an impression you want to make and how much of a rapport you think you may have established with the interviewer, there's a whole range of questions. What questions do you have for me? Yes. Tell me about the guy who was in the position before me. Why is this position open? Usually you get some raised eyebrows.
I've never thought about that one.
For a loop. Why do you leave? Okay. This looks like a really great place, but this position is open. Why is it open? You got to be careful because you'll come across looking like a dick. You have to have established that relationship with the interviewer. And I've interviewed people. One of the things that I've done. Now I don't know. Hold on a second. I'm going to grab something. I need a prop for this. Let's see if I can find it. If I can't find it in 16 seconds, we'll call it a day. It's got to be here somewhere. God damn it! Yeah, when you're interviewing people, you need to have this prop handy, but I don't know where it is. Oh, wait, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Okay. Okay. Now imagine you're interviewing for a job and I'm the interviewer.
All right.
Good night. Ding, 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 ding. Good night. Ding, 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 ding. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Too late. You have no idea where that was about to be.
No.
An old sketch from Monty Python's Flying Circus. If the person on the other end reacts as appropriate to the sketch, I'll know this person is a Monty Python fan. I'll know this person has a sense of humor similar to mine, and that we are likely going to get along. I don't often do this. I usually feel out the person, and if I think that I'll pull this little thing out.
The only one I've watched is The Holy Grail.
An excellent film, but they had their entire series, Monty Python's Flying Circus, which was groundbreaking in many, many, many ways. By the way, you can look up on your own time on YouTube, Monty Python, the interview sketch, and you'll yeah. we'll, we'll set that down. Another question for you. Actually, I do have a question, but I'm going to first refill my glass, and then I'm going to ask the question. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
I need dead air here. Oh, you're not going to introduce me to that nice lady off camera, are you?
I will.
Because no doubt she's wondering, what the hell is my son doing talking to this pervy old guy in North Carolina?
Hey, Mom. You still in your chair? Come here.